They called it a turkey, not a compliment, not a joke, an insult stamped on an airplane that looked overweight, overcomplicated, and over its head. And yet, this turkey would become the deadliest ship killer of World War II. Stay with me, because by the end you'll see how an aircraft mocked on the runway rewrote the rules at sea. Let's rewind to a hot summer morning on Long Island. A barrel-bodied prototype rumbles forward, its single huge radial engine dragging a mountain of metal toward. Liftoff. In the cockpit sits Chief Engineer Robert Hall. On paper, this machine is too big, too heavy, too ambitious for a single engine. On takeoff, it lumbers more than it leaps. Navy observers fold their arms. You can almost hear the verdict. Too complicated. But the wheels leave the ground anyway, and with that, the turkey begins its long, stubborn march toward legend. How did we get here? In 1939, the U.S. Navy threw down a gauntlet, replaced the aging torpedo bomber, yesterday's champion already out of breath, with something that could do everything, not just a little faster or a little farther. Everything. 3 crew, an internal bomb bay, because loose ordnance under the wings was over, armor for the men who had to fly into gunfire, self-sealing tanks so a single tracer didn't become a funeral, and the big one, a powered dorsal turret on a carrier aircraft, something that had defeated every attempt so far. Oh, and while you're at it, 300 miles per hour and 1,000 miles of range on one engine. 13 companies say we can. 2 finalists emerge. One is sleek, the kind of airplane you could frame on a poster. The other looks like someone inflated a fighter to the size of a delivery van. The sleek one gets early applause, but the world is sprinting toward war, and production capacity, cold, industrial reality, rearranges the board. The contract moves, the clock starts, and a small team at Grumman stares at a requirement list that reads like a dare. This is where engineering stops being tidy. You want an internal bay big enough for a 22-inch torpedo or 4 500-pounders. You add structure, doors, actuators. Wait, you want a powered turret that can actually track a fighter? You need reliability the Navy hasn't seen at sea. More wiring, more motors. Wait, you want wings that fold on a cramped carrier, yet unfold strong enough to carry that payload into steep turns and hard landings? You invent a hinge that doesn't exist yet. And yes, more weight. Every solution drags mass behind it like a parachute. Every pound threatens the same verdict. Failure. Legend says Leroy Grumman solved the folding wing problem with a pink eraser and 2 paper clips at a conference table, proving a compound pivot that could swing those enormous wings both up and back. It worked on the desk. It worked in metal. It would one day allow this giant to live on the smallest escort carriers, multiplying how many decks could launch it into the sky. But first, the engine, a twin-row radial growling with roughly 1,700 horsepower. The most the Navy can get at the time is bolted to that barrel fuselage. Empty. The airplane is a heavyweight. Loaded for war, it becomes the heaviest single-engine aircraft the Navy has ever tried to throw off a deck. Pilots will later nickname it many things. Turkey sticks. The team in Bethpage ignores the sneers. They keep cutting metal, even before the prototype proves itself. Urgency steamrolls caution. An initial production order lands months before the first flight. Think about that. The Navy is buying a machine that hasn't flown because the storm on the horizon is no longer a rumor. The message is brutal and clear. Build it now. The first flight? Surprisingly promising. It flies like a truck, but a solid one. Slow on the controls, heavy on the wrist. Not exactly a dancer, but stable. It carries the load. And the intricate systems, the ones everyone expected to cough and quit. Function. That alone turns a few heads. Then reality strikes. A test flight ends in fire. The prototype burns. The crew gets out. The airframe doesn't. Critics circle like sharks. Too many parts. Too many points of failure. Too much. The response from the builders is blunt. Go faster. Upgrade. Fix. Try again. Within weeks, production airplanes are coming off the line because the war that once loomed arrives in a single morning at Pearl Harbor. Now the stopwatch runs in combat time. Fresh off the assembly floor, the new torpedo bomber reaches the fleet. 6 of these brand new giants arrive in Hawaii, while the big carriers are already racing toward a name that will be etched into history. Midway. Volunteers step forward. Some of them have never flown beyond the horizon. They take the keys to a machine few truly understand, bolt in, and aim for an enemy armada led by the most experienced carrier pilots on Earth. Picture the scene. Dawn over the Pacific. 6 newcomers lift from coral runway to gray ocean, on radar screens and lookouts' lips. Contact. The Japanese Combat Air Patrol, maneuverable Zeros flown by veterans, dives like hawks. The turkeys look slow. At torpedo attack speed they are slow. Defensive guns hammer, but coordinated fighters slice in. Cannon shells walking across wings, tails, engines. One by one the newcomers fall. One refuses. Hit. Smoking. Bleeding. Instruments shattered. Hydraulics gone. A turret gunner dead. The radio operator wounded and barely conscious. The pilot can hardly see through the mess on the glass. But the airplane, the overbuilt, overwired, over-everything machine, keeps breathing. Self-sealing tanks deny the fire its meal. Armor does what armor is supposed to do. The big radial up front, punctured and punished, keeps dragging the wreck back toward land. Not pretty, not graceful, alive. It belly lands back at base, ruined beyond hope, but still in one piece. Engineers count holes. Dozens from machine guns, multiple cannon hits, systems smashed like glass in a storm. And yet it came home. That single battered survivor becomes the loudest rebuttal to the too complicated chorus. Complexity can buy time. Redundancy can buy life. Midway is a turning point in the war, but for torpedo squadrons it is a blood price. Crews in older types are annihilated. The new one suffers terribly too. Most of those first 6 never return, but that one wrecked airframe on the runway shouts a different truth. Survivability is not an abstract word on a spec sheet. It is a living pilot. It is a wounded radio man who gets another sunrise. It is a machine with enough backup in its veins to tolerate chaos. After Midway, the easy path would be to cancel the headache. Instead, production accelerates, squadrons reform, training changes, tactics evolve. The turkey keeps showing up, and every time it does, crews learn what it can take, what it can carry, and how far it can be pushed before it says no. Let's pause on what this airplane actually is, not in nicknames, in design. A cavernous internal bay that swallows a naval torpedo or mixes bombs, depth charges, or mines without turning the wings into Christmas trees. A powered turret that tracks faster and fails less than clumsy hydraulics. Wings that unlock, swing, and lock again with a ballet of pins and pumps that somehow holds together through salt, wind, and hard landings. And a cockpit set high to peer over that fat nose. Poor for finesse, but good for a pilot who has to line up low, straight, and steady when every gun on a warship is spitting fire. It is not nimble. It is not glamorous. It is, however, exactly what its crews need. A flying toolbox that refuses to quit. The next test is time. As 1942 rolls into 1943, the airplane that struggled for respect begins to rack up something that even skeptics cannot argue with. Results. But not because it suddenly turns nimble, because its strengths, range, payload, toughness, and that chameleon bomb bay fit the war the Navy actually has to fight. First, the Pacific. Experience teaches hard lessons. Torpedo runs flown alone die alone. Coordinated strikes improve survival. Fighters escort. Dive bombers distract. The big. Torpedo bombers press in from multiple bearings to split a ship's gunners. Losses remain heavy, but hits land. Light carriers roll over. Damaged giants that limp from night battles become easy prey at sunrise. The turkey, flown with brains and teamwork, turns brutal. Then something unexpected happens far from the headlines. The Atlantic changes the airplane's destiny. German U-boats are strangling convoys, surfacing under cover of night and weather, outrunning ships, outlasting escorts, small. Escort carriers show up to protect the lifeline. But what can fly from them and actually hunt the hunters? The same too big torpedo bomber fits, thanks to that oddball folding wing. Its bay accepts depth charges, rockets, and something new and secret for the time. An acoustic torpedo that listens for a submarine's propellers. It can carry radar, eyes that pierce night and fog. It can stay out for hours. And when it forces a U-boat to dive, it circles like a shepherd until destroyers arrive to finish the job. The airplane designed to kill battleships becomes the most efficient submarine killer anyone has put in the air. By now, our turkey has a different presence on deck. Crews trust it. Maintainers know where it leaks and where it never will. The powered turret that couldn't work at sea works. The folding mechanism that would fail under fire does not. The internal bay that would jam feeds and closes and feeds again. The joke is wearing thin, but we're not at the climax yet. The best, or worst, depending on which flag you fly, is still to come. In the late war, this airplane will help crack fleets, erase the myth of the unsinkable, and carry a future American president through smoke and flame. It will leap from giant carriers and tiny ones. It will fight in clear skies at noon and return in blackout night to a horizon lit by 100 ships risking everything to guide it home. The turkey will become exactly what the title promised, the deadliest ship killer of its war. And I want you thinking along with me as we go. Did the Navy win because this airplane was beautiful? Or because it was built like a safe with wings? Heavy, redundant, and stubborn? Tell me in the comments what you think. Was over-engineering the secret weapon of the Pacific and the Atlantic? Because next, we'll step into the hangar where mass production transforms a one-plant project into a nationwide machine. And we'll meet crews who carry this beast into storms of flak, fight their way home on broken systems, and prove, beyond any nickname, what a turkey can do. Walk with me onto the factory floor, where the sound of riveting drowns out doubt. An engineer rolls in a demonstration airframe held together with simple sheet metal screws, a teaching tool that lets General Motors break the airplane apart like a puzzle and put it back together for mass production. It's a blunt message to the skeptics. If we can disassemble it in minutes, we can build it by the thousands. In offices that used to schedule sedans, new blueprints flow. In buildings that stamped bumpers, jigs for spars take their place. Day shift hands tools to swing shift hands to graveyard. The lights never go dark. The turkey is about to multiply. Numbers become their own kind of firepower. As Grumman pivots to fighters, GM's Eastern Aircraft Division takes the baton and sprints. Airframes roll out in rows. Crates of parts arrive like a tide. Inspectors with chalk mark what passes and what doesn't. Test pilots in leather helmets line up at the run-up pad. Engines coughing, clearing, roaring. Each new tail number is another chance to be proven wrong or right. Each is a promise to crews who know exactly how expensive almost can be. On deck, squadrons are reborn. Torpedo Squadron 8, scarred by Midway, takes delivery of new machines and new men. The briefings change tone. No more heroic solo runs into a wall of fire. Strike packages are choreographed like a prize fight. Fighters hide to SWAT defenders, dive bombers to split the ship's gunners. Torpedo planes in from a beam and broadside to force the target into a bad decision. Survive the approach, drop steady. And true, then yank a heavy bird back to altitude while the dorsal gun rakes the deck for any tracer that dares to follow. The first clean demonstration comes fast. Over the Eastern Solomons, a light carrier becomes the lesson plan. Avengers from 2 decks time their runs, unspooling torpedoes that chew open seams below the waterline. The target staggers, lists, dies. The cost is real. Flak and fighters always demand it. But now there's a line on the chart where the turkey makes good. Crews step from the debrief with that quiet look professionals get when a plan that should work does. Guadalcanal turns the lessons into habits. Night actions leave enemy heavyweights limping at dawn. Morning strikes finish what the darkness began. A battleship, once untouchable at sea level, takes wounds no armor scheme can forgive. The airplane that was supposed to be too slow to matter carries the final word in its belly. It isn't the only player on the stage, but when the curtain falls, it has left a mark deep enough for the historians to measure. Listen to a pilot describe the workload. The takeoff shove that feels like you're pushing a house uphill. The climb where the cylinder heads run hot and the cowl flaps earn their keep. The long cruise legs where fuel math shares mental space with navigation fixes. The attack run where everything slows down. Hands light but firm, feet quiet, eyes glancing from airspeed to altimeter to a horizon full of steel. And then the violent, deliberate turn away. As the torpedo seeks home, the airplane flies like a truck, he admits. A forgiving truck. One that won't finesse you out of trouble, but will carry you through it if you do your part. A turret gunner talks about arcs and timing. In training, he practices tracking a fighter that isn't there, feeling the motor under his elbows, learning when to squeeze and when to wait. In combat, the turret's electric heart proves why it was worth the argument, slewing quicker than hydraulics, refusing to fade when the deck heaves or the airframe shudders. He'll tell you the best compliment in his world is simple: "I kept them off us." Now shift theaters. The Atlantic is a different kind of killing ground. Gray seas, low ceilings, horizon that disappears into fog. U-boats prowl like wolves, and every merchant ship that vanishes under the waves is a victory for arithmetic the Allies can't afford to lose. Small escort carriers, barely bigger than a city block, steam with the convoys. Their decks are short, their elevators smaller. What torpedo bomber could possibly live here? This one can, because of that odd, ingenious wing fold born from a pink eraser and a couple of paper clips. The Big Bird parks like a compact, stacked shoulder to shoulder in a hangar where inches matter, and when it launches, it carries a different set of teeth. The bomb bay that once tucked a torpedo now cradles depth charges and rockets. Under the skin rides a radar set that turns night into a map of returns. In the radio compartment, new instruments listen to the ocean itself. The tactic is elegant in its cruelty. Patrol ahead of the convoy at night. Paint the surface with radar until a small spike, too regular to be weather, appears. Descend. If the submarine is still up, the rockets and charges come first, forcing it under. Once it dives, the math flips in the airplane's favor. Submerged, the hunter is slow. The Avenger is patience with wings, dropping sonobuoys that stitch a net of ears across the sea. The pilot orbits. The radio man calls bearings. Destroyers, summoned by code and vector, knife toward the sound. If the U-boat risks surfacing to sprint, the Avenger is already circling, already setting up another pass. In this duel, the most complicated plane in the war becomes the simplest answer. Stay, see, strike, and don't let go. By the end of this chapter, the scoreboard is blunt. Dozens of submarines are sunk or finished by teams that start with an Avenger's radar blip and end with a column of oil and a slick of wreckage. Across the ocean, British decks host the same airframe under a different name, working the same playbook under the same weather. Ask any convoy Commodore what changed the night, and he'll point to the flight deck and nod. Here is where overbuilt stops sounding like an insult. The airplane's wiring harness carries more than power. It carries resilience. The bay doors that would jam keep cycling in salt spray. The landing gear that wouldn't last takes hit after hit of deck slams and still retracts for another mission at dusk. The giant radial up front, abused in training, punished in combat, keeps its rhythm even when cylinders are nicked, baffles bent, cowling dimpled. Redundancy becomes ritual. 2 ways to do one job, 3 backups for a failure you hope never arrives. Every extra pound somebody complained about last year is, this year, a reason a crew walks down the gangway alive. Production surges to meet the pace of operations. New variants roll in with more power spun from the same frontal area, better cooling on summer days in the tropics, and the electrical capacity to feed radar sets that would have lived on a ship's mast only a few years earlier. Designers shave ounces where they can, add armor where they must, and err deliberately on the side of still flies when hurt. The turkey grows into its strength. It was never a sprinter. It is a distance runner with iron lungs. All of this sets the stage for the war's defining air-sea moments. A carrier battle where fighters write headlines but bombers clinch the outcome. A twilight strike that launches farther than prudence allows and comes back in. Darkness to a fleet that breaks every blackout rule to guide its children home. And 2 leviathans, floating fortresses built to teach the world that tonnage is destiny, meeting a weapon designed to defeat their invincibility below the waterline. Before we go there, ask yourself this. If you were building an airplane to survive the worst day of its life, would you chase elegance? Or would you accept the ugly that saves you? Tell me in the comments which choice you would make and why. Next, we push into the great carrier battles of 1944, where range becomes currency, endurance becomes courage, and an aircraft that once waddled off Long Island decks proves it can hunt at the very edge of possibility. By 1944, the turkey had grown teeth and range. The Pacific is a chessboard of blue. and the next game is the Philippine Sea, where fighters will write the headline, and a plotting torpedo bomber will prove it can play. The end game better than anyone expected. As air groups launch in waves, the big bird's job looks simple on paper. Carry the war farther than the enemy thinks possible, survive the gauntlet, and return when the sun is gone. The first act is daytime brutality. Fighter cover carves apart incoming raids in what history will remember as a lopsided shootout. But when the sun slides low and intelligence reports fleeing carriers just beyond polite range, the decision comes down like a hammer: launch. Anyway, it will be late. It will be long. It will be dark coming home. And some of these airplanes, heavy, homely, dependable, were practically built for impossible. They lumber off decks in the last gold of the afternoon, engines straining, crews quiet with that focused calm you only get when risk and purpose balance perfectly. Far out to sea, with the light leaking from the sky, the strike finds its chance. A light carrier staggers under the blows, torpedoes threading into the soft places below. The waterline, bombs snapping steel like dry twigs, smoke rolls, the target lists, then gives up the fight to gravity and flame. Now the hard part begins. Fuel needles lean on the left side of hope. The horizon is black. The ocean is a featureless sheet of ink. One by one, the airplanes point home, and every pilot in every cockpit knows the arithmetic. Distance versus time, engine versus consumption, courage versus luck. Men ditch, men disappear, and then, in a moment seared into naval memory, an admiral breaks the rules of war to save his flyers. The fleet turns on its lights. Decks blaze like runways. Battleships glow like cities. Destroyers paint the sea with white lines of wake. Out there, somewhere in the dark, a pilot sees the impossible, a ladder of light rising from the horizon. He trims for home. If you were in command, would you have ordered those lights on? Risked the entire fleet for the men in the sky? Tell me what you would have done, and why. Those who make it back land with trembling hands and empty tanks. The Turkey, with its long legs and stubborn heart, has proven something no chalkboard could. Range isn't just a number, it's a form of courage. A ship killer that can go the distance is a weapon that frightens fleets. And fleets will be frightened again, very soon, at a place where land and sea grind together in the largest naval battle the world has ever seen. Leyte Gulf is not a single fight. It is 4 storms crashing at once. Carriers duel, surface groups collide, submarines strike. In one corner of this chaos, dawn pulls a terrible curtain. Armored silhouettes on the horizon, taller than fear, steaming straight for small escort carriers and the handful of destroyers and destroyer escorts guarding them. This is Samar, and it reads like fiction. The Americans have no battleships here, no fleet carriers, no armored decks stuffed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs. They have what they have: Wildcats with hard claws and Avengers loaded for yesterday's ground support mission, general-purpose bombs, depth charges, and in some cases, nothing at all that a battleship would respect. The order is simple: attack anyway. Avengers claw for altitude and turn toward gunfire. Some carry torpedoes and use them. Others improvise with bombs meant for beachheads or rockets meant for barges. A few dive and dry. No ordnance left to drop, making runs simply to split the enemy's aim and steal seconds. Pilots time their attacks with destroyers charging in suicidal torpedo runs, the little ships throwing up curtains of smoke while their captains write their names into history with steel and nerve. Over and over, the big torpedo bombers roll in, lining up on cruisers and battleships that fill the windscreen like cliffs. Tracers stitch the air. Shell splashes rise like white pillars. The job isn't to sink a fleet outright. It's to make that fleet doubt what it sees. Doubt is deadly. The enemy admiral, convinced he's stumbled into the hornet's nest of a full carrier task force, blinks. After ripping the heart from one small carrier and 3 brave destroyers, he withdraws through a strait he fought all night to cross. Strategy books will parse his decision for generations. The crews on the little decks only know this. A handful of airplanes and a fistful of ships scared off giants. The Turkey, supposedly too slow and too clumsy for a modern sea fight, helped turn the biggest guns in the world around. Ask yourself, was that victory won with speed, or with pressure, coordination, and the kind of persistence only a tough, long-ranged aircraft can deliver? Drop your take below. I read everything. From here, the war accelerates. The ship killer's resume gets darker and bolder. In the sea beyond sea, a floating fortress built to be a lesson in invulnerability finds out what torpedoes do when they arrive from two sides at once. Flood the starboard, then the port, break the balance. Make the pumps chase a problem faster than men can run. Disagreement will linger over the exact count of hits, but not over the outcome. A Titan rolls and sinks under. Sustained aerial punishment. Torpedo bombers, working with dive bombers and fighters, prove a truth that steel alone cannot deny. Armor stops shells. It does not stop the ocean. Why is this happening now, in 1944, and not in 1941? Because the men are seasoned, the tactics refined, and the machine, our maligned Turkey, is finally being used exactly as designed, as a patient, relentless, multi-role predator that can carry what the mission needs, go where the mission lives, and come back when the mission is done. On the decks, the rhythm is constant, brief. Launch, form up, ingress, attack, egress, recover, repeat. The airplane's supposed flaws become familiar quirks. The heavy ailerons, the need to plan your turns early. The way the engine tells you things through vibration before gauges catch up. Crews talk about reliability like a prayer. What works keeps working. What breaks is backed up. What can fail has a second path. The powered turret continues to be a quiet miracle, fighting off interceptors, scaring marauders away from the vulnerable seconds after a torpedo leaves its cradle. Maintainers bless the bay doors that still cycle after a salt-soaked week at sea. Pilots trust the landing gear that surrenders to a hard deck slam without folding into shame. And still, the most dramatic test is ahead. An Emperor's ship, sent on a mission with fuel for a one-way trip, will steam into the guns and planes of a waiting armada. Nearly every aircraft that can fly will fly. The sky will fill with the hum of radials and the scream of wind over wings, and the Turkey, mocked at birth for its size and appetite, will help write the death notice for an entire era of naval warfare. Before we go there, I want to hear from you. If you had been on those small decks off Samar, with bombs that weren't ideal and rockets that didn't scare battleship armor, would you have turned in anyway? Would you have made a dry run just to split their fire? Tell me. The story of how a Turkey became the deadliest ship killer in World War II isn't just about hardware. It's about choices, made in seconds, that change history. Next, we face the giants head-on. We'll dissect how coordinated torpedo patterns break the will of armor, how night and weather became allies, and how an overbuilt airframe carried both a future president and hundreds of nameless crews through fire and water. And home again, sea beyond sea. Imagine a warship so vast that its designers dare the world to try. 9 18-inch guns, armor thicker than your arm is long. A ship built to be a lesson. Then picture what happens when torpedoes arrive from both sides at once. That's the math of sinking a giant. Not one perfect hit, but a rhythm. Port, starboard, until pumps lose the race and bulkheads sigh under the weight of the sea. Dive bombers smash the deck. Torpedo bombers punish the waterline. The giant slows, lists, and, after hours that feel like days, rolls and disappears, leaving only oil and a silence that doesn't feel like victory so much as gravity finally getting its say. What does a Turkey have to do with this? Everything. The internal bay carried the right weapon for a moving, armored target. The range put heavy metal where it counted, at the edge of daylight and fuel. The redundancy meant crews kept flying even when holes appeared where metal used to be. Strength multiplied strength. Coordination made armor irrelevant. Then comes a mission history teachers still whisper about. A late launch chasing fleeing carriers with not enough daylight and not enough fuel. You already know how it ends. The lights of an entire fleet blazing in open water to guide aviators home. But consider the unglamorous heroism inside each cockpit. Pilots leaning forward to will the needle away from empty. Radiomen calling fixes into a dark as wide as a continent. Turret gunners craning for threats that may not come. The airplanes that make it back arrive on vapors. Those that don't leave ghosts. And yet the lesson is carved in steel. If you can go farther, you change what is possible. Not long after, the ocean will host a spectacle that looks like a nightmare painted with searchlights. An emperor's last gamble. A super battleship with fuel for a one-way run, screens of escorts, and orders that sound like prophecy. Every airplane the fleet can spare launches. The sky fills. Our unlovely ship killer lumbers into formation alongside sleek fighters and shrieking dive bombers, heavy with torpedoes that were born to chew through a hull below the belt. First wave, then second, then third, approach from multiple. Bearings, force counterflooding, ruin the geometry of survival. Hits land. The giant staggers. Compartment after compartment floods, list increasing, guns falling silent one mount at a time. Inside the lead ship's steel bones, crews run and close and brace and hope. Outside, the sea does what the sea does. When the end comes, it is not quiet. A flower of flame rises, too bright to look at. Thousands of sailors go into the water. The age of the battleship doesn't end with a proclamation. It ends with the last wide black ripple smoothing itself back to a normal ocean. If you could choose your weapon against a fortress afloat, would you pick a single elegant solution or a coordinated swarm of good enough blows that never stop coming? Tell me in the comments how you would plan that attack and why. Before we leave the war's center stage, meet a young pilot who will one day sit behind a different desk. 19 years old, a name you know now, but then just another aviator with a squadron patch and a plane named for the girl back home. Over a tiny island, Flack walks up the sky and finds his engine, smoke in the cockpit, heat licking at the firewall. He lines up anyway, drops on target anyway, then points his dying airplane out. To see so his crew has the best chance to live. The bailout is brutal. He lands bleeding, alone in a raft, paddling away from shore, away from boats hunting him. Hours later, a submarine's deck rises from the waves like a stage, and men pull him aboard. He'll fly again, teach again, and one day be president. The airplane he flew was the same Turkey they laughed at in 1941. It kept him alive long enough for history to find him. By late 1944, the war changes shape. The enemy surface fleet rarely leaves port. Torpedo runs against capital ships give way to 100 other dirty, necessary jobs. The bay that once hugged a single fish now carries bombs and rockets in combinations that fit the day's target list. Need to rip open a bunker? Rockets. Need to peel back a runway? Bombs. Need to drop mines in a harbor that thinks it's safe? The Turkey becomes a delivery service for bad news. Marines signal from beaches pinned by artillery. The big bird arrives low and mean, skipping ordnance across water or dirt to the exact place where a crew chief's grease pencil circled on a map the night before. Versatility extends past the fight. A roomy fuselage swallows mail sacks and spare parts when supply lines stretch. Stretchers slide in when a strip on a coral atoll becomes an ambulance bay. Recon cameras click through broken cloud, making mosaics that planners spread across tables with rulers and pencils. Search and rescue sorties rake the horizon for a single yellow dinghy and the white flicker of a waving hand. Night operations, once the private territory of ships, belong to these airplanes now. Radar glowing in dim cabins as crews fly blacked-out legs over black water to find specks no human eye could catch. Across the Atlantic, the hunt continues. Radar turns weather into targets. Sonobuoys, tin ears on strings, stitch patterns into the sea that tell a story only trained listeners hear. Rockets slam into conning towers. Depth charges spool off racks and hammer home. The statistic that matters isn't beautiful, it's brutal. Boats sink, convoys live. The lifeline holds. Production keeps pace. Assembly lines learn the airplane's moods. New variants arrive with more power squeezed from the same frontal disc. An electrical system robust enough to feed hungry radar, and subtle tweaks that reflect thousands of. Squadron level, we need this requests. Every change honors the same philosophy. Better to be strong than pretty. Better to be reliable than perfect. Better to bring crews home than win a climb rate contest no one will remember. The war ends, but the airplane refuses to retire on schedule. In the cold gray of the North Atlantic, a new opponent replaces the old. Submarines still prowl. Crews now fly with a boom extending from the tail, a magnetic sensor that feels disturbances in the Earth itself. A deep belly radome arrives. The Flying Guppy, the world's first real airborne early warning carried aloft by the same machine that once hugged torpedoes. Ships extend their radar horizons by 100 miles because a turkey is orbiting out there, eyes on, telling them what comes over the curve of the world. Other flags take their turn. On a French deck steaming toward Indochina, the same silhouette lifts into humid air. On Dutch and Japanese decks in the 1950s, in Brazilian and Uruguayan markings, in Canadian service until the dawn of the 1960s, the airplane keeps doing the two things it was born to do: carry a useful load far and shrug off the kind of punishment that grounds lesser machines. It was supposed to be hard to maintain. Instead, mechanics discover something every engineer knows but few admit. Simplicity is great. Access is better. Ruggedness is best. Let's clear one persistent myth while we're here. The last torpedo run of history wasn't flown by this airplane. That finale belongs to its successor, a burly single-seater that hurled 8 torpedoes into a dam in Korea and rewrote a river for the rest of the war. And yet, look at the lineage. The idea that aircraft could carry naval torpedoes with precision against land targets, that courage and geometry could turn a lake into a weapon, was born in the same school that Turkey built. Plan carefully, fly steadily, attack decisively. Leave no room for luck to steal the result. So how does a joke become a juggernaut? By solving real problems at the cost of elegance. By showing up where doctrine says you shouldn't be able to. By giving pilots and crews margin for error on the worst day they will ever live. By multiplying a Navy's reach while shrinking the list of excuses. We're almost at the end, and I've saved the part that turns a nickname into a thesis. The numbers, the record, the reason no one laughs when this airplane taxis past. In a moment, I'll lay out the tally that settles the argument for good. But before I do, I want your take. Was survivability the decisive technology of the war at sea? Or was it flexibility, the ability to switch roles without switching airframes? Drop a comment with one word: survivability or flexibility, and your sentence for why. Next, the verdict: carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, tonnage, sorties, loss rates. And the final answer to our title: how a turkey became WWII's deadliest ship killer, and what that truth says about how we should build anything meant to win under fire. Here's the verdict the nickname never saw coming. By the end of the war, this so-called turkey had become a ledger of hard facts. Nearly 10,000 airframes delivered in roughly 3 years, an industrial sprint that turned car plants into carrier lifelines, more than 46,000 combat sorties flown, 729 combat losses for a per sortie loss rate around 1.5%, among the lowest of any combat aircraft in the conflict. Break that down and you see what mattered. Most losses to anti-aircraft fire where the job demanded flying straight and brave. Very few to enemy fighters thanks to escort, tactics, and a turret that tracked fast and kept working when it had every excuse not to. Now the part that answers our title outright. Count the ships, carriers, dozens sunk or finished in team strikes where this airplane's torpedoes and bombs tipped the balance. Battleships, 6, including the 2 largest ever built, forced past the limits of their armor by coordinated patterns that bled them below the waterline. Cruisers, 19, destroyers, 25, submarines, roughly 30 in the Pacific, and in the Atlantic, dozens more U-boats sunk or finished off after first contact from radar-equipped patrols. Add it up, and you pass 1 million tons of enemy shipping sent under. By the measure that actually matters for a ship killer, enemy tonnage removed per aircraft lost. This homely machine sits at the top of the American list, but a body count isn't the whole story. The airplane's genius was that it could be almost anything the war needed on any given morning. One day, a torpedo bomber drawing a ruler straight line through flak. The next, a bomber skipping ordnance into bunkers or runways. That night, a hunter with radar, laying sonobuoys and calling destroyers to a kill. After that, a lifter, mail, parts, stretchers, camera gear, whatever kept the fleet moving. It could even become a flying radar picket with a belly full of electronics, extending the eyes of the fleet beyond the horizon. Versatility was not a slogan. It was an everyday miracle built into a fat fuselage, and a wing that folded like a conjurer's trick. And survivability wasn't an accident. It was the point. Armor where crews sat, self-sealing tanks that turned sparks into silence, redundant electrics that kept turrets and doors cycling after punishment, landing gear that forgave bad days on steel decks, a bomb bay that accepted nearly anything without turning the wings into fragile scaffolds, a hinge borne on a conference table with a pink eraser and 2 paper clips that let a giant live on the smallest ships. All of it added weight, all of it added life. Want a case study? Look at the battered Midway survivor that crawled home with cannon holes through everything that mattered and still flew, or the long-range Twilight Strike, where fuel gauges fell below comfort and a fleet lit the night to bring its aircrews back, or those gray Atlantic patrols where a radar blip at midnight became a kill at dawn because the airplane could stay, listen, and strike again, or Samar, where crews attacked anyway, with whatever they had, or with nothing but courage, until a superior force blinked. The war ended, but the design philosophy endured. This airplane kept flying, frontline in the US, into the mid-1950s, then across the decks and coastlines of allies, from Canadian ASW patrols in cold oceans to early warning duties with a great round radome under its belly, and service across Europe, South America, and the Pacific. It was supposed to be too complicated to maintain. Instead, it proved something simple. Rugged access beats delicate elegance. Redundancy beats theory on bad days. Strength you rarely need is priceless the moment you do. And the lesson reaches beyond hangars and carrier decks. If you're building something meant to survive chaos, an aircraft, a ship, a system, a company, you don't optimize for the brochure. You over-engineer the backbone. You build in second chances. You accept a little ugly if it buys you time, options, and lives. That's how a machine mocked on rollout becomes the benchmark everyone else quietly measures against. So when someone asks, how did a turkey become WWII's deadliest ship killer? You can answer without flinching. It didn't win with polish. It won with purpose. It carried the right weapons in the right bay, flew the distances the war demanded, absorbed damage other aircraft couldn't, and adapted to every role the ocean invented. It wasn't elegant enough to fail. It was sophisticated enough to win, and it brought its people home. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment with one word, survivability or flexibility, and tell me why that was the real superpower here. Share your favorite Avenger story, a museum flight, a family connection, a mission that stuck with you. I read every one. If this deep dive kept you engaged, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story. We've got more untold chapters from World War II coming. Machines and men who changed history in ways the headlines never captured. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next mission.